the Mantic Universe podcast. So much universe and so little time.
Hello, you are listening to the Mantic Universe podcast. As ever, I'm Chris. And today, dear listener, we're doing a Northern Alliance faction focus episode. So we're very, very excited to be with you. I grew up about 2 miles north of the Isle of Wight, so I'm not a massive northerner myself. So I'm going to need some help to go over this. So joining me here today, we have Bob. Hey, Bob.
Hey, Chris.
And we have Pod All-Star Peter. Hey, Peter.
Hi, Chris.
And the northerner who got stuck down south, Danny Graves. Hey, Danny, how are you, sir?
Yep, the exile is fine.
So I've what have I done? I've sort of been tooting the klaxon. I've lit the signal fires, and you mighty warriors have, stepped out of the sort of wasty tundra to join me to talk all things Northern Alliance. That was so good. No one had a reaction to that. I'm sure that's how that is. So, guys, this is the second faction focus episode we're doing. And Gad and Timothy and Nicholas were kind enough to make the first one on the Abyssal Dwarves. So, dear listener, I'd encourage you very much to go back and listen to that one. It was a lot of fun. And the purpose of this really is to talk about the faction in every way that isn't competitive gaming. So it's, why is this faction cool? Why do we like it so much? And why do, dear listener, why play this army is pretty much what we're getting at, right, guys?
Indeed.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So, guys, first question. Why are the Northern Alliance cool?
Well, what's everybody's favourite film, Chris?
The Thing by John Carpenter, you know that.
That's wrong. Everybody's favourite film is always Star Wars. And who's the good guys in Star Wars? It's the Rebel Alliance. And the Northern Alliance are the rebels in Panathor, except the Northern, which makes them even better.
I don't like Star Wars.
Well,
it's just the same film
wrong,
made 20 times and sold back to us. But anyway, we're getting off topic. Bob, why is the Northern Alliance cool?
Well, the Northern Alliance is cool because it's good to be naughty. They give off the vibes of cool, but they're just one step away from the Varangur, and everybody knows how sexy the Varangur are. That's what got me into it. I started with Varangur, and I got whisked over to the lighter side of naughty. They have all the same stuff, but they have the veil of goodness on top of that, and that's what attracted me to them. That's why I think they're cool. Peter,
why are the Northern Alliance... I've got to say, these are not the answers I was expecting when I asked the question. Peter, save us. Why are the Northern Alliance cool?
Same as Danny. They are the rebels, but also Vikings. What more do you need to say? Vikings that are good and don't rape and pillage, which I guess are the Varangur.
Well, I mean, we don't know. I mean, but they look like they know way around a pillage, don't they? Let's be fair. But they, to me, so they were the first army that got me into Kings of War. So it was I think it was the big 3rd edition army, as I remember. And of course, Vikings, wild northern tribesmen, but also the fact it really is an alliance and all the different factions fighting together. Because obviously in fantasy, there are certain immovable tropes like, elves are haughty, dwarves are in their holds. And the Northern Alliance is pretty unique. It's, tribes and, various different other races in a very inhospitable place, trying to build something positive, and who can't get behind that in 2024, right? It's cool. And you get all the different play styles, the different units all fighting together. You get a ton of monsters. Yeah, it's fantastic stuff. And what I thought was actually pretty interesting listening to the Abyssal Dwarf faction focus, was they were talking about the Abyssal Dwarves enslaving other evil races, whether it's the Ratkin or some Hawks or whatever, or just, enslaving other dwarves just to be jerks. And to me, that seemed like the other side of the coin to the Northern Alliance, because the way the Northern Alliance is kind of doing the same thing in a way. It's a load of good and neutral factions fighting together, but it's, in a positive way. It's on the promise of something better. And I thought that was really, really cool. So I sort of thought that maybe the Northern Alliance is closer to the Abyssal Dwarves, in a sort of Batman and Joker type way. So, yeah, I thought that was very, very cool. And dear listener, please go back and listen to that. So, guys, who found? So let's talk about. Hang on, where are we? Believe it or not, I do read the notes, dear listener. So So does anyone want to say anything else in terms of the faction and the whole aesthetic, or just at a very high level?
I think the other thing is, you mentioned it yourself, it's a bunch of misfits and outcasts that have all come together. And I can only speak for myself here, but I guess I consider myself a bit of a misfit and an outcast, a geek and a nerd, and, not one of the popular crowd. So it appeals
I am
to
a
me.
massive rebel and punk rocker. Anybody says, Danny, what about this? I'm like, sod off. I'm doing it my way. And to me, Northern Alliance just epitomizes that. You don't like being a dwarf in dwarf society? Screw you. I'm going up north where the air is clear. You don't like living in the stuffy elf lands? I'm off. I'm going to live up north. Even the trolls are smarter up north. So they've got everything. What more could you want, apart from warmer weather? But in the city of Chill itself, even though it's made of ice, they do apparently have like paradise gardens and beautiful weather as well. So they can have it if they want it.
Fantastic. So, guys, let's get on to talking about the lore then. So, who founded the Northern Alliance and why?
Well, that was originally an elf called Prince Talinar, and he got exiled. We don't know why, but he was pretty naughty.
It's a bad look, though, isn't it? It's a bad look.
Well, not necessarily, because if it's in elf society, he might have just, I don't know, blown off in a phone booth and run away, and they didn't like it and got exiled for that. But he just went up north with literally the rings on his fingers, and he used those rings to buy the loyalty of the local ogre tribe. And that's what kicked it off. And once he ran out of gold, he had to rely on charm and wit like the rest of us.
Yeah, so that's a really good summary. So, Bob, he then started to just sort of carve out in the ice. Because I think before he founded his own little sort of kingdom domain, he sort of wandered the world sort of shiftily. It's all. I'm reading it. I'm very, very, very suspicious of this guy. I've got to be honest.
Well, apparently so. He was he disappeared off, travelled around, tried to make alliances, and in the meantime, the original alliance that he had came under attack, I believe. The goblins decided that they were going to muscle in on his territory. And it was left to other people to defend it initially from the goblins.
Yeah, there seem to be key points he's not available and no one seems to know where he is. But despite that, it's all gone pretty well. So you're absolutely right. And I think there were a couple of times the whole thing was nearly destroyed and nearly came unstuck by, the sort of nasty monsters and other races you'd imagine to be up there. So he ends up founding this city called Chill. Guys, do we like the name Chill, or do we think it's a bit lame? What do we think?
It's embarrassing, Chris.
It is a bit. It's sort of like, what should we call it? Well, it's cold, so we'll just call it Chill.
I sort of imagine they just, it was Friday afternoon. They wanted to be in the pub. They put that in as a placeholder and then never quite got round to changing it. They're like, oh, come on, that'll do, Well,
maybe because a lot of the demographic of Kings of War are middle-aged men, so maybe they're trying to attract a younger crowd, Hey, guys, come on over. Kings of War and Chill, yeah?
Quite possibly, Danny. Yes, let's go with that. Let's assume that's correct. Perfect. And so let's imagine Chill then. So it's obviously been built up over time. Our fearless leader has lots of magical power, and it's alluded to there's something buried in the ice. And I'm pretty sure at some point Ronnie told me what the secret is already in one of the novels. I just haven't read the novel, and I forget which one it is. Peter.
Yeah, so I was just going to say about Chill. It's not that it really got built up over time. It magically appeared at their hour of need. They had started building up Blackridge, which was like where it started, and that got overrun. And then they had to retreat into the mountains. And just as they were going to get overwhelmed and they were going to get wiped off the face of Panithor, Talinar sort of managed to magic up this huge city, which is where they turned.
Huge blue city. So it's okay, super. So a wizard did it, and it's sort of I'm sort of imagining Dubai, but the cold version. So as we've sort of mentioned, Danny, there's magical gardens that grow there, unexpectedly, obviously not used to that climate. It's a really, really amazing seat. It's an absolutely amazing city. And it's obviously literally a beacon of good in this sort of wasteland, northern wasteland.
It's the Wizard of Oz, Chris. You've got a problem, you need to go and speak to the magical elf prince to solve your problems. There's all these different races all coming together, whether you're a cowardly lion, whether you're a dwarf, and you're all skipping along, trying to avoid halflings and get to this magical city, which is going to be your savior.
Can I just say I very much like that reply, Danny? That's excellent. Super. So there we go. So, and we're fighting, and the reason why Northern Alliance are fighting, we're obviously trying to protect our magical city and our big magical secret, right?
And each other, Chris. They're a community. They're all all the different tribes. They're all banding together for mutual security.
And it's a bit more of a sort of meritocracy than other races, right? So, if you turn up and you're good at what you do, there's the need so that, people get promoted more due to talent rather than just your surname or whatever.
Yeah, the tribes can be quite divisive. If you've ever looked at the English football fans, you'll know quite happily that you're wearing the wrong shirt, you're going to get the cat kicked out of you at the wrong time, the wrong place. But if you've got one charismatic guy who can say, everybody come together, fight as one, and we'll be a lot stronger. It's all about unity, Chris. It's a beautiful thing.
Brilliant. What was the football hooliganism film I saw with the hilarious accents? Green Street or something? I
don't like football, so I don't pay attention.
Well, Danny, come on. You're the one that brought up the analogy. Come on. No, we're moving on. Peter, save us.
I was just going to say there is actually like a sentence in the law sums it up really, and it's talking about chill, but it says it stands as a symbol of hope for the repressed and the dispossessed. It's a home for the disenfranchised and the lost, and it's a rallying point for those that wish to unite for something greater. So, I mean, they are good Vikings, basically.
Very noble.
In my head. with a very enigmatic, dubious leader who's found power somewhere.
I did ask Ronnie if it was a pyramid scheme, and he said it wasn't. So that's that's money in the bank. So
no,
guys,
that's the Empire of Dust, Chris.
Yeah, my other army. So guys, we've talked a little bit about the leader. Are there any other famous heroes in the faction?
It's funny you should say that, Chris, because I embarrassed myself last year at the Northern Kings GT. I was the Northern King at the Northern Kings with the Northern Kings. I took all 4 special characters. So that's Olaf, Clarion, Serakina the Ice Queen, and Rim the big ice giant. And I won 1 game out of 5. So lesson learned, but it was a lot of fun.
Fantastic. And Olaf, I think he's the hero from Dungeon Saga, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's in Dungeon Saga. His background is he did really well in Dungeon Saga, made loads of money, got loads of fame, moved down to the Golden Horn. Got a little bit too famous, got a little bit too drunk, and ended up in a gutter. And some mysterious northerner dragged him out, dusted him down, and went, "Come on, sunshine, sort your stuff out," and sent him back up north. And now he's part of the Northern Alliance.
Because when we started reading the Dungeon Saga lore from the original game to play a couple of years ago, I seem to remember when they were sort of planning their quest, they had that scene where, in the Lord of the Rings, where they go, "You have my axe and my bow," that scene. They sort of do that, but no one ever mentions Olaf. So it's sort of like everyone else is like, "Yeah, Madringa, you go along, you'll be good." And then, they never refer to Olaf. So I sort of thought he's sort of the burly, terrifying cleaning man that's in the room and no one wants to tell him to leave or something. He just seems to sort of go along with them. Also, this guy who we're all terrified of, don't make eye contact with him. It's that kind of situation. I very much approve, by the way.
Everybody needs a friend like that, Chris.
Super. So we also have the Clarion, who's the Skald emissary of the Northern Alliance. And then we have the special Ice Queen, Serakina, I'm going to say, and probably get it wrong. And Hrim, who, of course, is the Lord of the Frost Giants. And he's very, very scary in the game. So famous places. So we talked about Chill, which is the magical city that appeared just as the Greenskins were defeated. Blackridge was the site of the original capital before they were forced to retreat. Books. What books to read, guys? So Shadowed Horizons short stories is available on the Mantic website. Daddy, you might have an inside track on this.
I do, Chris.
Anything coming?
There's little bits. My major novel, Raging Grace, has got a half-elf character in. One of the things I loved about Northern Alliance reading the background was half-elf berserkers and what they went through. I mean, what's the psychological state where you have to leave the beautiful, lush, green lands of Elvenhome, travel all the way up to the frozen north, and run psychotically at orcs in just your pants? What does somebody actually have to go through to reach that mental state? So a lot of the premise, my first premise of the book was, let's put somebody through hell and see where they end up.
And then not give them a pair of trousers. Hey, because I think there's quite a lot of stigma against sort of half elves, right?
So I put a lot of that in the book. And there's a lot of Night Stalkers, which basically send her a bit loopy as well. And also, we've got an Armada short story book coming out soon, and that's got Northern Alliance in it, and elves and Varanga. And so I did a lot of the background of the Northern Alliance, looking at how they lived and how they work as a unit. And there's a lot of socio-economic stuff in the background as well. So I really wanted to flesh out the Northern Alliance feel, as it were. So, yeah, there is lore coming. You just got to be patient.
Fantastic. And so let's move on to so guys, let's talk a little bit about where did Talinar's power come from? How was he able to create chill, and where does he constantly disappear to? Which is I feel like a very good question that more people should be asking in the Northern Alliance. Boss, where is it you are going to for months at a time?
Does seem a bit suspicious, living in the mountains and just disappearing off. It reminds me of somebody else that's been doing that recently in a story I read, and he's about to come to a sticky end, I think. And the Golok has been doing that as well, disappearing off periodically, and now he's come unravelled because he's been found to be worshipping Eriagful. So it just makes me wonder whether, going back to what I said before about the closeness of the Northern Alliance and the Varangur, could Talinar be making deals with somebody he's not supposed to in return for all the power? Because he's getting all these things together, bringing it all up, and like you say, nobody knows what he's protecting, where it is, and how he came about getting it. It's just, for me anyway, it's all up in the air. And I always seem to, going back to the Star Wars analogy, always look a bit on the dark side.
But we already have, from my perspective, we already have Basileia, who we know are they're sort of a bit sort of, I don't know, fascist is the word, but, they do unpleasant things, right? They're a bit like the Inquisition or something. They do, in the name of good, they do evil things.
The cleansing pools, Chris, the cleansing pools.
Yeah, exactly, buddy. Exactly. There's not a lot of sense of humor there, and then, of course, we have Golok off, worshipping evil things as well. So there aren't that many good factions in the game, and I would like it if they just kept the Northern Alliance as the shining beacon of good, and we can take it at face value and ignore his little walks. Peter.
Yeah, I was going to say I was going to sort of put a more optimistic spin on that, and if Golok's sort of dallying with the evil forces in the world, perhaps Talinar's found something more celestial, something on the lighter side of things that's providing him with this.
So we can say, never mind the Goloks, here's the Northern Alliance.
Well, if you read all the background, the history of Panathor, as opposed to the separate races, there's a major event in that I think it's probably a good read. Let's say a certain somebody who got defeated, maybe she's hiding up there. That might be something. Who knows? Oh. Apparently in Rise of the Celestians, there's a hint as well, but I'm just not going to tell you.
Somebody who's named after a season.
Need a little bit of secrecy.
No, that sounds really good, buddy. Thank you. There was just enough of hinting there. That's really, really cool. So, guys, let's talk a little bit about modelling opportunities for Northern Alliance. I mean, I love the Mantic models, and it has a pretty full Mantic range. And I think as a podcast, we always want to encourage listeners to obviously buy Mantic models and support Mantic. But, yeah, guys, what do you think of the range? Any gaps? What have you particularly enjoyed doing? Let's touch on that.
I must admit, for myself, when they first brought the stuff out with the Vanguard Kickstarter, and then moved on to the plastics, I initially I didn't like the models purely and simply because they came out in the restic, the way they sold them. But now they've sorted that out. The Klansmen and some of the newer plastics that they've done, the half elves, are absolutely amazing. It's just if you're getting into the game, buy the ambush set. The birds and the berserkers, the models are crisp, they're clean, they're well animated, and they are a dream to paint and build. That's for me outweighs the fact that all me frost fangs are in the same pose, and all my snow trolls are in the same pose. Unfortunately,
and the frost fang. It's such a shame as well because they're beautiful, aren't they? But then
they are.
Yeah, I think they're the only models I've got which are non-Mantic. I think I got something like skee-ball miniature, like massive wolf things, and then I've glued Mantic tribesmen onto them. So it looks kind of Mantic, but because let's be honest, I think they're something like €55 for a box of 3. So they're expensive for the Mantic ones, and they're monopose. And I thought, that's all right. I'll do something else for that. But it seems to me they were. I think it was unfortunately a bit of a terrible business decision that they seemed to design the line initially, and they've corrected it now, thank goodness, mostly for Vanguard rather than Kings of War, right? So we had. I mean, I've got a ton of monopose snow trolls that also don't really rank up nicely, even though they're monopose. You'd think, okay, well, it's going to be a dude holding a spear and you can just rank them up nicely. No, doesn't. There's something about the angles of that model that does not sit nicely, even on a multi-base. So that is a bit of a shame. But I think with the second pass at the army, they've gone back and thankfully corrected a lot of those errors.
I think also the judicious use of the vault has really, really boosted. The number of guys at the club that had bought Northern Alliance armies, they bought the starter army, and they had Klansmen on sprues sitting around just idling because they went for other things because they didn't want the faff of putting them together and trying to rank them up. And then with the vault coming along, with the fact that now everybody has pack hunters, they're just coming out of the yin yang at our place. If you're not toting 3 or 4 regiments of pack hunters, it's just not worth putting them on the battlefield. And that's because of the vault, because they can now. They don't have to go through and buy the Mantic resin. So I think, thumbs up to Mantic for that one. They've certainly breathed a lot of life in, because you've still got to buy the Klansmen. So they're still selling a lot now of models that they probably wouldn't have sold previously. And then people are just turning them into what they want: Huskarls, pack hunters, everything that they want to. For me, it's been a big boost for the Northern Alliance, especially here up north.
So this is a really good example of, you said it, Bob, of this is not the vault hurting Mantic sales, it's the vault working in conjunction with their hard plastics to make Mantic sell more of them, right? Because these are more useful to people. And Bob, do you want to give you mentioned your club, do you want to give it a little shout out?
Oh yeah, it's the Ribble Warriors. They meet every Tuesday night at the Moor Park Social Club in Preston in Lancashire. We play a lot of Kings of War, we play Armada, and we've just started playing a lot of Firefight as well. But no Gates of Antares. That died a couple of years ago, unfortunately.
No! Best game in the universe. Firefight's good. Firefight's good. Firefight's a good game, but Antares is really good.
I said the model line for me, I started because I went in on the Vanguard Kickstarter, so I got some Northern Alliance as part of that, and I was like, well, I've got enough for a small unit of them, I've got enough for a small unit of them, so the army just kind of grew from there. And I absolutely love the Northern Alliance models, like the half-elf berserkers and the pack hunters. I actually prefer the Vanguard ones than I do to the new plastic ones, just like the pose and stuff. It's quite a weird one, but yeah. So I've got 3 troops of half-elf berserkers, I think, all in the Vanguard pose, which are a nightmare to get hold of.
Yeah, of the sort of the rustic ones, I think the half elf berserkers were the best of them, because they if you base them up nicely, they still look nice now, I think, even though they are monopose. But I've still got some of the old house coal models.
Yeah, I didn't have quite enough of them, so
I thought they were supposed to be dwarves, and I was like, no, they're too tall for a dwarf. I didn't really even understand what the model was supposed to be. No, it's a too tall dwarf. It's a giant dwarf. Doesn't make sense.
But the vault's been great. With the ice elementals as well, there's only one single sculpt, which can get a bit boring. So I 3D printed all my ice elementals just so I had enough to put with the rest of my guys, just so I had enough to get an army going. So they're the only non-Mantic things I haven't got, because I totaled it up. If I wanted 3 hordes of ice elementals, it was like 160, 170 quid or something, and I'm not paying that.
yeah. On top of everything else you bought on the army, so it's pretty much going to be doubling the cost of the army, or getting up there. Peter, what do you think, buddy?
Yeah, I got the up-to-date Mega Army back in the open day was on in October. Love it. Love the models. I've changed the Frostglaw Riders slightly in terms of I bought some transparent acrylic rods, which I'm going to mount them on instead of on the little stone outcrop thing to make them look like they're actually flying. And I wanted to be 100% Mantic this time, but again, I can't get hold of any snow trolls at the minute, and B, don't like them. So I've actually gone to Etsy for that one.
What's unfortunate is I was thinking about cutting the arms of some of the snow trolls to just at least give them a weapon like that. Sorry, this makes for great podcasting, guys. Just move my arm up a little bit. But the way the fur is, you can't. It'll look weird. It doesn't make sense. So they're just monopose. So there we go. But
you can do a few little things. You can cut a little wedge out of the elbow, bend it in. You can green stuff. Doing swap at heads. I did a Morlock's head with some extra fur on to change it up. I had a Games Workshop plastic Minotaur tail or something I put down the back. Adding extra little things like cloth and heads around the side. Changing up weapons. If you use a hairdryer, blast them until they're really, really soft, and then you can bend them into different places. You can twist them slightly on the torso, and then position them slightly different on the multi-base, so they can look a little bit different. But the monopose, it's a lot of work, and I've only got one unit because I just didn't have the strength to do another. But I've got the vault, so I'll probably print out another unit at some point. So that's pretty cool.
That's fantastic, guys. And in terms of the theme, I mean, obviously the Northern Alliance, I think of it a bit like the Empire of Dust, in as much as it has an incredibly strong and very attractive theme. Obviously, northern, cold, icy, snowy, all that good stuff. Could you, in a way, I think of this, I mean, obviously it's very, very strong. I don't know whether it's a downside, but it's just a point. I can't imagine what the army would look like with any kind of other basing, though. Have you guys got any ideas on this? If someone didn't want to do a northern theme, which, to be fair, feels like missing the point of the army, but could you guys imagine I couldn't imagine a desert base or even a grassy base. To be honest,
really. Having spent time in Iceland in the summer, you could do a base like that. That'd be quite interesting. In that wherever it wasn't green, it'd be black volcanic.
Yeah.
And lots of small bushes and stunted bushes, and obviously boiling pools could be a different theme. It'd still be very north because it's based on the north of Iceland. I had thought about doing that, but when I actually weighed in how much effort it'd be to do that sort of thing, I just bought a load of fake snow and slapped it over the top instead.
They still do have summer in the Arctic Circle. There's still like masses and masses of forests there, open grassland, which does all melt. See, grasslands, woodland, it's still feasible.
I always just think of Skyrim, the video game, and how varied that was. You can have loads of different kinds of north, right? So super, guys. So in terms of basing, then, so Bob, that was a fantastic idea. I love that. So what have you guys actually done for your basing?
I got a free pot of Games Workshop snow effect about 20 years ago that I never got around to using, and I just went, you know what? So most of my bases, I get some cork tile from home base, just break it up, stick it down, and do sand around it, just so it breaks it up a little bit, so it's like rocks on dirty ground, and paint it up, and then just some blobs of PVA glue in strategic places, bit of the snow flock, and it's good to go. I'm not overly fussy, but it looks nice overall.
I'm Scott, aka Palette of War. Welcome to Mantic Universe podcast, and check out my YouTube and Instagram.
This is Ronnie Renton, and you are listening to the Mantic Universe podcast.
Peter, have you started yours yet? What are you planning on for the bases?
Similar to Danny, but my frost cores, I've got a block of polystyrene and I've kind of cut it into like a cliff, the flying over a cliff. That's as far as I've got. I've only done like 3 bases so far. So.
Nice. Bob?
Well, I go sort of halfway between. I've got thin XPS foam, and I put that onto 3mm MDF bases, carve that into shape. Then I put acrylic medium over the top of it, which I got from my local hobby craft place. Massive tub of it. It's like plastic filler, but very, very fine. And after it's dried, you can sand it and shape it. Then I stick Welsh slate on top of that, paint it, spray it black. I use AK's Terrain Snow for the bulk of it, because that's like a white paste that goes over the top. But then I use Woodland Scenic's Snow Flock over the top of that, so it looks like fresh snow on compacted snow. And also the advantage is that I can put footprints in it, so it looks like the units walked across to where they're standing. So the front's pristine, and then behind is all churned up, so it looks a bit more realistic. Having said that, it means that my bases take anywhere upwards of a week to make, because I have to wait for them to dry between each section. So if I decide to change my army list, I have to give myself plenty of time to make sure that I get it. But it looks good.
Oh, but that's worrying about the footprints behind the unit. That's just next level stuff, though, isn't it? That's absolutely amazing. And for me, so I just got some MDF cut for the bases, glued magnets to it. I then got some DAC clay, but milliput or whatever would also be absolutely fine. And I got I think it's a Green Stuff World frozen roller, one of those texture rollers, and they're absolutely fantastic. They're so easy to use. It's completely idiot proof. Do that, base it, paint it blue and then lighter blue and do all that stuff. And then I put a layer of, I think it's GW Hard Coat. I think they've changed the name of it now, but it's just basically some kind of shiny see-through stuff. And then I think I've got some Vallejo water effect. So I put that over where I want it to look like there's ice there, basically. And it's ridiculously easy to do. And you get not as good results as Bob, I'll be honest, but very good results that I'm extremely happy with. And it's really fun. It's easy to do, a couple of cheeky tufts and you're well away. So it's a lot of fun to do. But I love, Bob, that idea of just the black, the black rock and everything like that. That sounded so cool. That sounds really, really cool. Really interested in that. Super. So, guys, let's talk a little bit then about the composition of the army. Let's just talk in very general terms. So what units do we just think are super, super cool units or heroes, or what do we think really stands out?
Well, I've already said my favourites is the half-elf berserkers. Like I say, from the Vanguard models, I just love those poses. And in the game as well, they're really fantastic. I mean, for 115 points, they've got speed 6 with wild charge D3, so they're super fast. They've got Iron Resolve and dash 15 fearless, so they stick around even with the defense 3. They've got 15 attacks with thunderous charge, hitting on 3s. Troops of those are fantastic, so that's never really taken an army without those for a start. The rest of my army is a bit of a hodgepodge, so I get bored really quickly, so I've got one unit of each, apart from the ice elementals. So don't ask me about how to win with them, because I'm terrible.
Peter, what about you, buddy?
I've been brainwashed by Ronnie. So for me, it's the Frostclaw Riders. Just listening to how enthusiastic he was about them, that's what sort of prompted me to look into NA anyway. And they are lovely models. Yes, I've changed it slightly, but how they play, I don't know, because I haven't played against or with it.
I got my
Sorry,
I got
Danny,
my
go for it.
backside handed to me at Warfare by a Frostcore army. They've got so much shooting, and next to 2 units of the Gladestalker style ones, because you get frozen by those, and then you can't charge the Frost Claws, and the Frost Claws keep moving back, and slowly, no matter how fast you are, you're running forward and you're just getting shot to pieces. It was horrendous.
Bob, what about you, buddy? Any units really stand out to you?
Well, the first 2 units that I painted for my Northern Alliance army were dwarves. Strangely enough, if anybody knows me, you know how much I like my dwarves. The dwarves of Northern Alliance, to be honest, are what free dwarves should be, with the Fury and the Ordered March and that. So, yeah, I painted the dwarves. And because they are dwarves on big birds, also the Frostclaw Riders.
That's really cool. I to be honest, I keep it simple. I just love the Human Clansmen. I just absolutely love that kit. I think they look just fantastic on a base. And I really love, as a Trident Realm player as well, I really love the Ice Naiads. Just think they're super, super cool. Even though some of the resin bits are a little bit dodgy, but that doesn't matter. But yeah, for me, it's just the simple stuff.
Even the entire range is fantastic. I mean, the Chimera model, as soon as I saw that, I was like, wow, yeah, I got to have one of them. The Frost Giant's great. The plastics are all fantastic. And the Frost Claw, and the Frost Fang Riders, they're fantastic as well. I've got a couple of characters. Yeah, I love them.
Yeah, the Lord on Frost.
I do feel sorry for the sorry, Chris. I do feel sorry for the Tundra Wolves. The models I love, the Mantic models for the Tundra Wolves. Unfortunately, I've got some, and I know a couple of guys that have got them. They're really nice to paint. They really look characterful. But one of the questions I asked on Facebook, why does nobody take them?
I think they're great. I love them. I always try and take them. I like having a regiment, but I don't like putting them up forward. Even though they've got the speed, I'll put my main battle line forward and I'll keep them hanging back a little bit. With the Pathfinder, they can get virtually anywhere you want with that speed. And they're there to hit round about turn 4 or 5. Getting a flank charge with them, the amount of attacks they've got, and if you're keeping them back, they're not getting shot off the table immediately. And if you give them the Helm of the Drunken Ram, they're hitting as hard as cavalry, hitting on 3s, Thunderous 2, 18 attacks for a budget price. And if you can get them on a hill as well, coming off that Thunderous 3 I did manage to do once, it was beautiful. So they're really hard to use well, but when it does pay off, they're well worth the points.
Is it, I mean, I suppose, I think we have a question on this, but is it they sit somewhere between, because they're not cheap, but they sit somewhere between Snow Foxes, which are more kind of pure chaff, and then, things like Frostfang. I know they're faster than Frostfang, but maybe they're not quite cheap chaff and they're not quite cavalry either. Maybe that's part of it.
Yeah, they're halfway in between. So, like with regular infantry in most armies, regular infantry don't see as much work because they're not very useful as anvils. They're not very useful as hammers. They might not be as fast enough. So if you've got those units like just in the middle, well, if you want pure chaff, you're going to go cheaper. You're going to get the Snow Foxes. If you want more of hammers, well, you spend the extra points and you get the Frostfangs. So they're in that weird place where they're good, but there's so many things in the army that are better and do better things. So they miss out, really.
I've got 2 troops of them painted up because I think they're as well for the Riftforge Orcs. But I'm not sure if I've ever actually used them, but the models are fantastic, albeit very heavy metal models. And guys, Peter, I know you're pushed for time, buddy. Should we just skip ahead to your army list quickly? And then we can come back to talking about tactics, if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay. You want me to just read it out?
Yeah, well, first of all, why have you called it Gorilla Ice Baby?
Because I was feeling silly at the time. Didn't Vanilla Ice do a song called Ice Baby?
Yeah.
And I went with Gorilla because in my head that's the sort of fighting they would do, like guerrilla tactics in the mountain.
Oh, I see. I was thinking of sort of a snow troll gorilla. Okay, no, that's fine.
So yeah, Gorilla Ice Baby. This is probably what I'm going to be taking to Clash of Kings. assuming I get my butt in gear and get it all painted. But so I've got a regiment of the half-elf berserkers with the Taranar's House Guard and a brew strength. Then I've got 3 troops of the Icekin Hunters, a horde of the tribesmen, and a horde of the trolls to be a bit more sticky. 2 regiments of the Frostclaw Riders, swarm of Snow Foxes, Cavern Dweller, a Lord, who has a name now, Snow Troll Prime, and a Lord on Chimera. I have no idea if this list is any good. We'll see.
But
It's okay.
Stuff is just really expensive, right? And everything is really, really good, so you want it in the list. But it all adds up so flipping quickly. Sorry, Danny, go for it, buddy.
No, I was just saying the list's okay.
Yeah, I just went for balanced, basically. A bit of everything.
Yeah, so with Kings of War, always have things that can fulfill the objectives. So have stuff that can hold the line, have stuff that can kill other things. You need a little bit of shooting. If you go too much shooting, then you're going to suffer in other areas, but having at least some to give you those options, and then having stuff that can claim table quarters, and is also fast enough to go over and get objectives as well. So you've got a nice mix of stuff there, and that's nothing wrong with that list at all.
Thank you.
Hooray, approval. So I suppose let's swing back to talking about tactics for the army and the play style of the army then, Peter. And obviously when you've got to go, you've got to go. So I think there are 2 sort of not quite special rules, but there are 2 armies that are very very prominent within the army. One is obviously Frozen, and the other one is Wild Charge. So it seems to me we're a really fighty army. I mean, there's good shooting and all the rest of it, but it's quite an elite army overall. We're pretty fighty, lots of crushing strength in there natively, but we really need to get into combat and pick the combats, I guess. And so obviously freezing the opponents and giving them -1 to their move, so they can't charge as far. And us having Wild Charge, which means we can charge in some cases quite a lot more than you might imagine. Those 2 things are probably quite key to the army being successful, I would have thought. Danny?
They are, but it's all situational. So you can't build an army around that, because if you've got like Huskarls and you've got Wild Charge 1, that's great. And you want to get the charge off against Speed 5 infantry, you're going to get the charge. But if you're coming up against elves or ogres, then you're going to get hit first, which then means you need to have chaff, which then means you need to have inspiring to keep them alive. So there's so many things in the Northern Alliance army list that have to synergize well to get the optimum effect. So you can't really build your army around those little things to win, unless you're doing super, super specific builds and going highly on that. Like I said before, with the Icekin Hunters and the Frostclaw Riders and all that shooting, that works perfectly. But the army then suffers in other areas. They're really useful tools, and now they don't come up as much as you think, but now and again in a game you'll think, I can get this charge off and he can't. If I freeze that, then they're not going to be able to charge next turn. It's a very small margin, but it makes it really flavorful for the army. It's just not something that you'd build the army around.
So we almost need, from what you've said there, Danny, I think that was a great point. Our one army list almost needs to be able to perform in 2 ways. One is we hit first, and let's say we fight against dwarves and we get the charges we want, and then we're fighting against ogres and they are that little bit faster. They're going to get the charge off on us, probably, right?
That's why you've got to have an army that synergizes. So if you've got a load of hard stuff that you want to kill things, you need to be able to get them in combat. So you either have to have something like Snowfox Chaff, so your enemy will hit them, kill the Snowfoxes, and then you can charge in and kill whatever. Or you've got to have something like an Ice Naiad Horde, which is just a solid anvil. You can put that out there, and that'll stop virtually anything dead in its tracks. And then you can put your guys in to flank charge the enemy there. So you have to synergize the army to get it to maximum effect.
What do you think, Bob?
Well, I was just, while Danny was talking, I was just looking at the 2 army lists that I run most, and one of them is 2 regiments of dwarf clansmen backed up with 4 regiments of pack hunters and some various other stuff with a Frostfang Horde, Snow Foxes. But the one I used mostly is Ice Naiads, 2 pack hunters, 2 Icekin hunter regiments, a frost claw horde, a cavern dweller, and a couple of thanes and a snow troll prime. So really, that's more towards trying to play into that. Some of it shoots to great effect. It's got chaff. It's got the heavy hitters that synergize with the frozen. So it's the one I've had the most success with, but it's also the one that most people say that it's a bit too overpowered with the shooting, because it does have combat, it does have high unit strength for scenario play as well. I'd like to say it's the army I'm taking to Clash, but obviously, as you know, I'm not playing. But it might actually go to Clash in the hands of Walt, who's
very much on my team. Yeah.
Yes, I believe you're all playing Northern Alliance.
Yeah.
So I've offered him my Northern Alliance.
This is Fred, reminding you to visit the Kings of War forum, kowforum.com. No ads, no commercials. That's kowforum.com.
So that he can take part rather than be the odd one out with ogres.
That's really kind, Bob. So it's a little bit funny. So I literally finished a Twilight Kin army. I think I've got about 4 models to do. And then I realised Peter, who's dear listeners, just unfortunately left the call. Peter, my friend Chris, who's coming for his first tournament, he's doing a Northern Alliance army. And I thought, what a sort of wasted opportunity it is if we've got 3 players on our team playing Northern Alliance and then me playing as evil elves. Just narratively, we would have got around. We could have fudged it, but I just feel like it would have been a lot stronger narratively, because what we'll do is we'll come up. None of us are particularly good players, but we're going to come up with a narrative of our own for Clash of Kings. So as we're playing, we're Walt's going to come up with something. Are we, have we left the Northern Alliance? Are we sort of almost on a crusade? More Northern Crusade. If so, what are we doing? What are we trying to achieve? And what do the battles mean? So yeah, I'm really excited to do it. I mean, it was because it was the first army I'd done for, and it was for Kings of War, and my first ever ranks and flanks army I did. It wasn't terribly painted, but I wasn't really happy with it. So at the moment now, I'm just going back and rebasing it. Honestly, I've painted some models from fresh, and I think they probably took less time than the models I'd already painted once. Not quite sure what happened there, but in some ways, I think painting new models is actually working out faster, dear listener, than me actually just making my existing models look a bit nicer. Oh, and one thing we haven't mentioned actually is, from a rules perspective, if the enemy unit is frozen, a lot of our units have or can upgrade to a special rule called Tundra Fighters, and that gives us, I always forget the name, is it Frenzy? It's re-rolling ones to
gives
wound.
you Vicious.
Vicious, that's it. I always forget the name of that. Which, potentially could take an already very fighty army and make it all the more consistent, right? So even more scary. Super. So I think we've talked a little bit about play style. It sounds to me like, and I think this is a really good thing, the sort of the army you want to take is a balanced army. And I always think that's good for Kings of War, to be honest.
Yes, I think it's probably the best way to do well at anything is to take a balanced army.
Getting a bit of reverb there for some reason. Have we lost Danny?
No, I'm still here.
Oh, buddy. We're getting some weird sounds all of a sudden. Never mind. Danny, can you talk a little bit more about tactics? Because I'm not competent.
Basically, take what you want, find out what works for you. Because, like Tom Robinson used his Northern Alliance and won Masters with it, and you can actually go and buy that army on the Mantic website straight out. But just because he won with it doesn't mean you're going to win with it. Find out what playstyle works for you, because Northern Alliance are super punchy, they're super tough. You've just got to work out how to use them to your playstyle. And to be honest, pick models you like, because you've got to paint the entire army. And as you go, you'll think, I want some more of these. My army's lacking this. There's a few things that I'll say
I'd always take, but other players wouldn't even touch. So
do we think it's a good army for new players?
Yes, because it's awesome, and if people are enjoying playing with them, then they'll win eventually. They're quite an easy army to play with when you're starting out, because when you've got such things that are so strong and so tough, you can throw them in and, oh, look, I've just deleted that regiment. Brilliant. I can just turn them around and then I'll delete that regiment, and brilliant. But then when you'll come up against a better player, they'll work out how to outmaneuver you and beat you in that way.
And I think in terms of new players, I think it's really useful. I mean, firstly, we've got things like snow trolls, which are really easy to paint. But I think it's a pretty good new army to do. I know people always say ogres is a good first army to do, but I think the Northern Alliance would be a really good, fun project to paint because there's lots of variety. You can go snow trolls. Hey, speaking of snow trolls, guys, I think of them, they're sort of a hammer, they're sort of an anvil. Do we think they're a good unit rules-wise?
Yes. They don't punch. They're one of those units like Tundra Wolves. They kind of sit in the middle. They're not as powerful as Frost Fangs. They're not quite as durable as Ice Naiads, but they do sit in the middle. I remember one of the American guys. He had a couple of units, and he had a Thane with Talinar Standard behind, which boosts up their nerve by they got Rally 1. Give them a Headstrong item, give them the Fury item, and the Staying Stone that sorts out the nerve problem. And they've all got Regen 5, the Crush 2, Vicious. So they make really good solid anvils that can dish out a lot of hurt as well. They're not like maximum punchy, they're not maximum anvil, but they'll do the job. So yeah, I really like them. Main problem is they don't have Strider or Pathfinder, so when they're charging in, they're only hitting on 4s. As soon as they're hindered, they're hitting on 5s, and they're just not dishing out enough hurt. And because they're on such large bases as well, they're hard to maneuver because they're monstrous infantry. They can find themselves in positions where they can't get into combat, or they're getting flanked a lot more. So that sucks.
Yeah, but I think they're really cool. Other than the fact that models are monopose, they're fun to paint, easy to paint. Super.
Ice Elementals, for easy to paint, Ice Elementals are beautiful, fun to paint because they're all one colour. You can just go to town. As soon as you've worked out your colour scheme, you can just go, with a dry brush or whatever. I 3D printed all mine, and yeah, just basically all one colour. And once you're starting out and you learnt the trick that you can move them, shoot them, and then surge them into combat, it's an extra round of killiness. If you really, I've not managed to do it yet, but what you can do is you move up, shoot another unit, kill that, and then surge into the unit next to you and kill that. You could kill 2 units in one turn potentially.
I played a game. Sorry, Danny, can you mute yourself, buddy? I played a game maybe 2 days ago, and that exact same situation happened where they shot off and killed one unit and then surged into the flank of another unit and also killed that one. Which, for a game with lots of beginners, it was a little bit rough. But it wasn't me doing it, I hasten to add. But I suggested it was a possibility, should we say. Perfect. So, super. So, I mean, there's so much to unpack. Do we think, are there any interesting units that people are sort of missing at the moment? Anything else in terms, or thematic, or anything cool we haven't mentioned unit-wise?
Well, people always say things like polar bears, but we've kind of got the Frostfang riders already. I don't think there's any major gaps in the army. To be honest, when people ask questions like that, I'm just interested to see what comes out. There's things I might like, but because of Kings of War, you can model whatever you want as long as it's on the bases. You can do anything you want already. They've got shooty stuff, they've got combat stuff, they've got big monsters. You can really go to town with modeling and use whatever models you like.
Bob, are there any units we haven't talked about that you just think are really cool?
Well, to be honest, my favourite thing of the Northern Alliance, the model range, is the Cavern Dweller. I don't know if you know the one I'm talking about. The sort of Goliath giant troll thing with claws. I have three of the models purely and simply because I love the model that much. I bought 3 so I could paint them up in different styles. I've painted one in a flesh colour, one to match my snow trolls, which is blue flesh and brown fur, and then one in sort of a dark grey monotone colour scheme, which I was originally going to put in a diorama of being in a cave for the thematic effect, but it's that nice. It just sits on my shelf at the moment behind me. But yeah, in the game itself, it's a really, really nice piece.
Sorry, Danny, can you mute yourself?
Good tricks it can do.
When I first got the model, I didn't think much of it, if I'm completely honest. It was only when I started painting it that I really enjoyed it and saw the detail and that kind of thing. Fantastic. So I'll very quickly just run through. So I think I've made maybe 6 very different lists. So just thinking about what I'm going to take to the GT. So I've called this one Northern Uproar. So it's 2,300 points. So I've got a horde of the Ice Naiads upgraded with the Tundra Fighters and the Spears, so I'm hoping they'll do some wounds. I've then got Pack Hunters with the Javelins. I've got 2 troops of them, 2 troops of the Icekin Hunters. They're 145 points with low nerve, but they just look really, really good. And I was thinking maybe if there's a play against something with a lot of flying, I could kind of put a couple of troops of either the Pack Hunters or the Icekin Hunters behind my lines to maybe try and deal with the flying, maybe. If not, they'll be, chaffing up my important stuff. I've then got 2 of the Hearthguard regiments of the human tribesmen with the Tundra Fighters, so they're really expensive, so 235 points. But they're very hitty infantry. So yeah, hopefully I can keep them alive. A horde of the Frostfang cavalry, which again, very expensive with the Tundra Fighters and the blessing of the gods I've given them. So their nerve isn't that great. They're not that fast. I think they're speed 7. So can I keep them alive to get them into combat? That'll be the big question. I've then got 3 troops of the Snow Foxes, which I think for 80 points are just fantastic. And they've got Pathfinder and Stealthy, etc. And then I've got 2 Ice Queens. One is just going to be a little healer. She's got Shroud of the Saint and heal, so heal 7 basically. So quite expensive, but hopefully just doing that every turn. And then I've got an Ice Queen with the Sacred Horn and Veil of Shadows. So hopefully I'll have a big stealthy bubble over my battle line. And then I've got a Thane because he's cheap with Talon's Standard. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what that does, dear listener. And then I've also got Hryn the Ice Giant. And and I must admit, I don't think he'll make it because I don't know how I'm going to fit him on the in my army box to get it on the plane. But that's the.
I've got a spare one you can borrow it if you let me know.
Oh, thanks, buddy. Yeah, that actually might be a very, very good option for me. Thank you very much, buddy. Danny, what do you think of the list, buddy?
It's okay. Yeah, nothing too wrong with it. Just play a few games, see what works, see what you're missing, and give it a go.
I love how sort of unimpressed he says, yeah, it's okay. Yeah, not terrible. I mean, to be honest, as you know, I'm not aiming to win the tournament. I just want something that's not going to horrendously disadvantage me before my incredibly mediocre play starts. Super, guys. So, right, should we move on to listener questions? So, General Gaddafi has asked us, what happened to all the horses?
Boys got to eat.
I think this is just a question of the Varangur. Obviously, they've got lots of horses in their list, right? But they haven't really sort of been mantified, right? I think that's more sort of a chaos human army that's in Panathor. So I would very much imagine when Mantic get around to looking at the Varangur and mantifying it, I imagine they'll get something a bit cooler.
Well, horses aren't really designed for running around in the snow, and the Varangur lands are a lot closer to the abyss, so I'm guessing they're a little bit warmer, so horses might be more inclined to running around in Varangur lands than they are in Northern Alliance. But you can get a Lord has a horse upgrade now since Clash of Kings, so there are horses, just not as many. They're rare, so only the big tough guys get to ride them.
Yeah, very good point. Super. So... Sorry, the way I've copied this, not actually clear where the questions are. Lots of comments over crispy fries, for example. Just scrolling down to the next question. Why is the Cavern Dweller the best unit in the army and also such a lovely model, even though it's PVC? Bob.
Oh, I think I'd already answered that one, to be honest. But it is the it's a lovely model. I didn't mention it's PVC because it's that lovely a model. It slipped my mind. But the cavern dweller basically small giant has the frozen presence, so it goes with the Tundra Fighter, activates that in any units. It's within 6 inches of it. D6 plus 6, crushing 3 attacks, hitting on 3s. Big high nerve.
Brilliant
high
little
defense.
mini giant. Yeah, life leech as well, I think. Life leech 2 or 3 even.
It does life leech, keeps it alive for a long time. A lot of people will run 1, but I've seen people run 2 as well. The only thing is it's only height 4, so it does lose out on the being able to see over things and that, especially if you've got frost fangs in your army. But the square base, the high nerve, the high defense, its nasty attacks, and the chilling presence make it, in my opinion, one of the best units in the army. I wouldn't say it is the best unit in the army.
And guys, John Paul Fuller Jackson, hey John Paul, is asking us, what's Talinar's big secret?
We're not going to tell you because that'll just ruin the surprise when it comes out.
Is the one he's figured out how to take chimeras while everyone else is stuck with slashes of various kinds? Quite possibly. So Nicholas Lee is asking, hey Nicholas, how does the Northern Alliance economy work, and are there interspecies conflicts due to the myriad races living together, i.e. are the common goals enough to smooth over potential old racial conflicts and cultural misunderstandings? It's a really good question. I mean, in terms of the economy, I imagine it has a very, very strong economy. We know they've got, they're magically growing stuff in Chill. I imagine there's an awful lot of mining going on and that kind of thing. So I'm sure, and who doesn't love a good beaver pelt or something like that? So I'm sure there's loads of stuff the North has. They've obviously got a strong fleet of ships. We know that from the law they've got, diplomatic missions all over the place. So I think they've got a square mile of the North may not be that much in terms of resources, a square million miles of it, very much so. So, I don't think they're lacking for stuff, right? Danny?
Yeah, I was just about to say economies in that situation are as big as they need to be because it's such a harsh, bleak life. They're only going to economize in certain areas where they need to. So if they need timber, there'll be a tribe that will live naturally near the woods, exploit the woods for timber, and they'll trade with another clan, which is typically mining. So they'll trade like that. There'll be hunters going out hunting. They'll have food producers. There won't be much farming because the land's not suited to that. So there'll be certain tribes that have certain economic skills. There'll be seafarers, which predominantly rely on fish. If you know any Scandinavians, they love their dried fish, which is brilliant for long journeys, for protein. But when you bring that all together under a leader, then you can mobilize those individual economies for war. And though it is tribal and they will have long-standing arguments between each other, when you all come together, it's surprising how little you bicker. I do Viking reenactment. I'll play Kings of War for real with steel weapons. And we go out to Denmark every year, and there's literally about 1,000 Europeans and people from all over the world. We're all living in these fields all together in Viking tents. Everybody's armed to the teeth, and there's never any fighting because everybody's armed to the teeth. So you'll get American, we had a Mexican, guys come up from all over Europe, Scandinavia, there's Russians, Icelandics, Irish, and we're all living together in this community together. We're there for a common goal, which is to have fun, train, work hard. And there's no fighting because, like I say, everybody's packing and we're all there to do the same thing. And that Scandinavian mindset, I think, the Viking mindset will apply quite a lot to Northern Alliance. They're all there, they're all different, but they're all there for a certain reason. And that's mutually beneficial. So why bother fighting? It's only going to come off bad for yourself.
And they've got enough stuff to fight anyway, right? Whether it's goblins or whatever.
Yeah. When you've got a snow troll, which keeps crapping on your lawn, what's more bigger danger, arguing with that thing, or are you going to argue with the horde of abyssal dwarves that are trying to blow your local tower up?
And then we have can I read this out? So, John Paul Fuller Jackson. Hey, John Paul is asking again, are frost fangs, let's see if I can even read this, placentals, marsupials, or monotremes? I have absolutely no idea.
They're felids. They're actually a distant cousin of gerpanthers. They've obviously just evolved to the climate. So because it's cold, they've got the bigger fur, and they'll have adapted a bigger body to hold in more body heat and survive longer winters by storing more fat. Obviously, the game in those areas, things like elk could be a lot bigger, woolly mammoths, they'll be a lot bigger, so they need to adapt to take that down. Whereas something in the southern climes, like a gerpanther, they'll be taking down, I don't know, birds, sheep, smaller prey. So the frost fangs will have evolved those characteristics to survive in those climates.
And I'm just skipping a couple of comedy questions here because we're a little bit pushed for time. But Scott, friend of the pod, Scott, is asking us, what's your favourite unit in Northern Alliance based on lore fluff and not stats?
Already said that. Half-elf berserkers, go!
Yeah, for me, it's the dwarf clansman.
We're consistent, aren't we? And Martin, hey, Martin. Is their favourite drink always on the rocks? Yes, of course. Isanti Russ. Hey, Isanti. Frostfang should be named Ravenclaws. Tribesmen are great. Yeah, that's fair. Sorry, that's not a question, but I think that's a comment. And Bob, you asked, apart from them being nice models, what reason is there to take Tundra Wolves? Yeah, we've discussed that. We've talked about that. I'm going to give them a try in a game and just see how we get on. Because I think they've got a lot of potential, but there's a lot of situations I would rather take Snow Foxes or something else. Depends what I want to do with them. But yeah, we're going to see. I'm going to give it a try. Super, guys. So we've got to the end of our questions. We've got to the end of our notes, dear listener. Is there anything else, guys? We haven't. I think we've gone pretty deep into Northern Alliance. Is there anything we haven't discussed?
I don't think so. I think that was pretty comprehensive.
Super. Bob, thank you so much for joining us, buddy. It's been an absolute pleasure.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And thank you, Danny. Pleasure as always.
Remember, Chris, bleed in the snow, feel my axe, and kiss my fuzzy little snow troll ass.
Thanks, dear listener. On that note, thanks, guys. Danny, what happened? Your sound quality was okay, but I think the issue is you don't have a